Hey guys, we are at day 17 of the 40-day fast. And as always, I want to thank you all for being a part of this process. I want to thank you all for taking this process seriously and actually just digging into God, pressing your way into God, pressing your way right into God and laying hold of all of the promises that God already has, laying hold to everything that God has already given you. You know, that's something that we should always be cognizant of. That's something that we should always have at the forefront of our mind. That listen, the things that you're fighting for, they already belong to you. God has already given them to you. The things that you're fighting for as it relates to your marriage, the things that you're fighting for as it relates to your family, as it relates to your life. Listen, these are things that already belong to you. The problem is there is a real enemy who doesn't want you to have it, but it's yours. It's yours. Listen, God has called us not just to possess what he's already given us, but he's called us to reign in those things that he's already given us. And so this is a part of the process. This is a part of the process where we're going to actually take hold. We're going to possess and we're going to reign in our marriage, in our family, in our lives. Why? Because those things already belong to us. We're not fighting trying to obtain or trying to get. Those things already belong to us. We're not trying to qualify ourselves for those things. We're not applying for those things. It's not as if we're asking God, well, do I deserve this or can I even have this? No. All of those things, they are already yours. They're already yours. The peace, the joy, the love, every single thing that God has already told you about your marriage, everything that he's already shown you about your life, your marriage, your family, they're already yours. They're already yours. So we're not trying to qualify for these things. We're not applying. This isn't an application process. No, they're ours. They belong to us. They belong to you. They belong to you. They're yours. And we're just using this process to teach us how to go get what is already ours. How to get what is already ours. Guys, day 17 of this process. And again, I thank you all for going through this process with me and sharing. Remember to go out to send your emails, send your prayer requests, your praise reports, your testimonies, whatever it is, send it to 40days@CynthiaMcClary.com. We are praying with you. We're praying for you. We're covering this entire page in prayer on a daily basis. We are praying for your marriages daily, even when we're not here, when we're not posting a video or we haven't posted something. We are bombarding heaven on your behalf, on behalf of your marriage, on behalf of your family, on behalf of you. Because we know the things that God has already prepared for us. We know those things. And listen, I don't want any of us to miss it. I do not want any person to miss or to give up on or to forfeit anything that God has for you. That's just like returning a Christmas gift. And I'm not talking about a Christmas gift that you don't want. No, I'm talking about, that thing that you wanted, that you really, really, really wanted. Well, it's like that being under the Christmas tree. You opening up the gift, your name is on it. Matter of fact, you haven't even opened it. You just got it from under the Christmas tree. You know what it is already. Your name is on it. It says, to you. And then you decide to give it back. Listen, don't give back anything that God has already paid the price for you. Please, don't forfeit any gifts, any blessings that God has already paid the price for you. It's yours. It is yours. And it's yours for keeps. It's yours to have. He has freely given this great and precious gift to you. It's yours. It's yours. It belongs to you. And that's something I want all of us to understand. These things belong to us. They belong to you. They belong to you. They belong to you. It's not a matter of do you deserve it or anything else. They are yours. They're yours. And they have your name on it. You just have to stick in the process. Be humble. Go through the learning process. It's not going to be good. It's not going to feel good all the time. But that is yours. Whatever God has spoken to you, it is yours. It is yours. It is yours. And don't let nobody else, don't let nobody ever tell you anything different. It's yours. It belongs to you. Go get it. Go and get it because it's yours. All right, guys. So, day 17. Day 17, we are talking about abiding. We're talking about abiding. And abiding simply is living in, dwelling in, or accepting in accordance to whatever guidelines have already been established. So that's what we're talking about today. We're talking about abiding. And so when it comes to abiding, we're talking about abiding in what? Abiding in the Word of God. And now, the Word of God, like I mentioned earlier, I said this another day on one of the sessions, the Word of God is not just the words that are written on the pages of the Bible. You know, the Word of God is whatever promise He's spoken to you in your time with Him or throughout your day, whenever. Whatever word that God speaks, whether it's the Word of God that you read in the Bible or the Word of God that He speaks to you, whatever instruction God gives to you is a word of God. And so when it comes to abiding, especially in this process, we have to learn to always be abiding in the Word of God. We have to learn to live in the instructions that He's given us. We have to learn to live in the promises that He's already made to us. And now one way that we can live in the promises that He's already given, that He's already made to us, live in the instructions that He's already given to us, and live in the Word that He's already given to us. One way to do that, especially when it comes to the promises, is to go back and to always confess whatever it is that God says. Keep on saying it. Keep on saying it. No matter what's happening, no matter what the situation looks like, one way to abide in the Word of God is to keep on saying whatever God says. Whatever God says. And not just to keep saying it, but to keep seeing it. Even though your natural eyes may be seeing something crazy and something totally different than what God is speaking to you or to what God has spoken to you, one way that you can continually abide in the Word of God is to make it a habit, make it a continual habit to constantly hear what God is saying to you. And how do you constantly hear what God is saying to you? Open your mouth and say it to yourself. Faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the Word of God. The more your faith increases, the more you're going to be able to abide. Sit in that place. Live in that promise. You know, so when all hell breaks loose and situations looking crazy and all that kind of stuff, you can still look at that situation and still speak the Word of God and not believe the situation. Not believe the situation, but believe whatever it is that God has spoken to you. That is how you live in the Word of God. That's how you abide in the Word of God. And now God has given us so much instructions during this 40-day fast. He's given us so many instructions like set your expectation, increase your expectation and your anticipation. He's told us about repenting. He's spoken to us about forgiveness. He's spoken to us about submission. He's spoken to us about being humble. He's spoken to us about realigning ourselves, realigning that structure in our lives. Well, when we go back and we apply, or I shouldn't say when we go back, but when we begin to apply the instructions of God in our lives, and every single day we make it our goal, at every occasion, at every instance, we make it our business to do whatever it is that God has told us to do. So even though our flesh might want to pop off and, just say something crazy, our flesh might want to lead us in that direction that God has already given us instructions against. Okay? So one way to abide in the instructions of God is to continually put into practice what God has already told you. For some of us, that instruction could be because, we're being honest here. There's so many times God says, nope, don't open your mouth about this situation. Instead of you saying something about it, you go pray about it. Go pray about it. Close your mouth and go pray about it. Yeah, see, I know it's hurting you. I know it's hurting you because your flesh wants to do what your flesh want to do. But what I want you to do is sit yourself down somewhere and go pray about it. Before you fly off the handle, go pray about it. God has already given us that instruction, whether we want to listen to it or not. But the way that we abide in what he says is to continually put into practice what he's already instructed us to do. We have to abide in what he tells us. We have to abide in what he says to us and in what he's spoken to us, whether it's a promise, an instruction, or the literal word of God from out of the Bible. We have to abide in that place. We have to live in that place. And here's the thing with abiding. Now, we cannot treat the instructions of God, the promises of God, the word of God. We cannot treat it like a vacation. We can't treat it the way that we would treat, a check-in at, the Hampton or the Hilton or wherever. We can't check in and out. We can't check in and out. No, when we abide, abiding has to be continual. It has to be continual. This is not a 3-day stay. This is not, a weekend stay or a 7-day stay somewhere. No, this is a constant, habitual abiding. Does that mean that you're going to be perfect in it? No, it does not mean that you're going to be perfect in it, but let your practice of it be perfect. Meaning, how sometimes we have said it or we have heard it said, I'm going to lay my religion down and curse you out. Or don't let me have to lay my religion down and curse you out or whatever, or don't put God on the back burner and then you walk out the door and proceed to do whatever it is that you want to do. No, that's not abiding. That's not abiding. No, abiding isn't perfection. What it is, it's continual practice. It's continually practicing whatever it is that God has instructed you to do. And the thing about practice, continual practice, is when you continually practice something, you get good at it. When you continually practice the instructions of God, you get good at it. And one day you're going to become great at it. One day we're going to become great at it. We're never going to reach perfection, but we're going to become great at it. We're going to become great at it. So when that situation walks through the door, that situation, pops off on the phone or wherever it pops off at, guess what? We're going to get to that place to where we're not driven to react according to the situation or according to the circumstance because of the fact that we have been abiding. We've been continually practicing the instructions of God, the promises of God, the word of God. We're going to be so good at it that we're not going to react to it. We're not going to allow it to dictate. We're not going to allow the situation or the circumstance to dictate how we respond or how we react. No, we're going to respond according to what has already been practiced. Abiding is important. Abiding is important. If you look at John 15:4, the word of God says, abide in me, and I in you. And if you go right down to verse number 5 in that same chapter, he says, he who abides in me and I in him bears much fruit. So what's the purpose of abiding? One of the greatest purposes of abiding, and this is a season where we are declaring to see some things happen in our marriages, in our families, in our own lives. And those things that we are decreeing and declaring, those things are fruit. And God says, listen, when you abide in me and I abide in you, you will, not you should, but you will bear much fruit. Much fruit. And that is the purpose of abiding. See, sometimes the reason we do not receive the fruit of the seed that has been planted is because we don't consistently abide. We don't consistently abide. Yes, we're with God on Sunday and we might be with him again on Monday, but if something pops off on Tuesday, then, it's like, God, we got to do what we got to do. And God says, no, but that's not what I'm telling you. What I'm saying is, even on Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday or Friday or Saturday, when something pops off, guess what? I need you to still be dwelling in me. I need you to still put into practice those things that I've already told you. Those things that I've already spoken to you. Those things that I've already instructed you to do. I need you to continuously put those things in practice. So that's what God is saying. The more you abide, the more you practice what God has already instructed, what God has already spoken. The more you do that, the more you abide in God, and the better you become whenever those off situations happen in your life. Whenever those off situations happen in your marriage, whenever those off situations happen in your family, and they're going to happen. They've already happened, and they're still happening. And the reason why, though, we don't see the fruit of what it is that we're dwelling in, that we're living in, is because oftentimes we vacillate, we switch in and out. I'm gonna live up to the promises of God today, but tomorrow, we do whatever we want to do. No, abiding has to be constant. It has to be constant. It has to be continual. It's not one day we allow the Spirit of God to lead us, and then the next day we're being led by our flesh. No, it's continual abiding. So that means that you have to bring your flesh under subjection to whatever instruction, whatever the Word of God says, and whatever promise God has already spoken to you. We have to do that. We have to do that. John 15:7 says, if you abide in me and my words abide in you, and now the Word of God, that's the promises that he speaks directly to you, to your heart. That's his instructions. That's his word that you can get, that you can pick up the Bible and read at your leisure. So God says, if you abide in me and my words abide in you, not only are you going to bear much fruit, and aren't we looking for fruit in our marriage, in our home, in our lives? Well, God says, not only are you going to bear much fruit, but here's the other thing with abiding. He says, you will ask what you desire, and it shall be done for you. How do you get what you desire? Abide. How do you get what you desire? Abide. How? How do you abide? And when do you abide? You abide consistently, constantly, making it a continual practice. Are you going to get it right all the time? No. You're probably not going to get it right all the time. I don't get it right all the time. But just because I don't get it right all the time doesn't mean that you can't get it right all the time. So don't let my shortcomings or anybody else's shortcomings dictate how you abide. No, because you can abide consistently, continually, if you choose to. So you have to make the choice. Okay, I'm going to abide. I will abide by whatever God has already spoken to me about. That's how you abide. So what does abiding have to do with marriage? Listen, there is a way that God has already set up marriage to function. There's a structure, and there are things, there are gifts, there are blessings, there are things that you automatically have access to when you abide. And there are things that just come along with the blessing of marriage and family, and just by virtue of you having life. Okay? How you respond, not just to situations, but how you respond to your husband. Husbands, how you respond to your wife. How you react to her. How you react to him. How you all react to your children. All hinges on how you abide. Because there is absolutely no way that you cannot abide in what God has already instructed you to do and love your wife the way that God has ordained for you to love her. And wives, there's absolutely no way that you can love and respect your husband the way that God has ordained and called for you to respect him if you're not abiding. Husbands, there is absolutely no way that you can lead your wife where God is calling you to lead her if you're not abiding. Wives, there is absolutely no way that you can follow him even as God leads him. There's no way you can follow him unless you're abiding. And it's the same thing as it relates to your children. There is no way that you can train them in the way that they are to go except for your abiding. Abiding is important because abiding has so much to do with your attitude. And I'm going to, there's something that I like to call the Beatitudes of marriage. And these are the Beatitudes of marriage. And the Beatitudes of marriage, you cannot have the correct attitude, the godly attitude in marriage unless you're abiding. A very wise man said one time, your attitude, not your aptitude, not what you know, not your gifts, not your talents, not any of that other kind of stuff. But it's your attitude that is going to determine your altitude. So your attitude, and now the correct and the godly attitude to whatever situation it is. How you're responding to your spouse, how you're reacting to your spouse, how you're even responding to your own life, to your own self. Even how you're responding to the thoughts and the ideas and the suggestions that may bombard your mind on a daily basis. Your response to those things, even your response to your children, is dependent upon your abiding. Because you will not respond with the correct. You will not respond in the correct way if you're not abiding. You will not respond with the correct attitude if you are not abiding. Even when it comes to speaking truth to your spouse, speaking truth to your husband, speaking truth to your wife, speaking truth to your children, even speaking truth to yourself. You won't even be able to speak truth in love to anyone if you're not abiding. Because abiding, not only does it have to do with fruit and you bearing much fruit, but it also enables you to bear good fruit. So the Beatitudes of marriage, these are what I call the Beatitudes of marriage. Be patient, be kind, be protective, be trusting, be hopeful, be strong, be the best, be pure, be true, be loving, be you. Do you know that without abiding, you can't do any of those things? Those are fruits. Patience, love, truth, purity, honesty. You being the you that God has created and called you to be. You being your authentic self. You being your God-ordained self. Your God-filled self. Your God-purposed self. You can't do that without abiding. You can't do that without abiding. That can't be done without abiding. That's why abiding is important. And what are you abiding in? You're abiding in the Word of God. You're abiding in the instructions of God. Whatever it is that the promises of God, whatever it is that God has spoken to you, you're abiding in that thing. And when you abide in it, when you put it into practice constantly, when you put it into practice constantly, you're going to get good at it. And then you're going to move from being good at it to being great at it. And when you move from being good to being great at it, well, and excuse me, let me back up. No, because when you get good at it, God already says you're going to bear much fruit. You're going to bear much fruit. You're going to bear much fruit. You're going to see the fruit of peace. You're going to see the fruit of love. You're going to see the fruit of joy. You're going to see the fruit of no strife in my house, in my marriage. You're going to see the fruit of obedience in your children. You're going to see the fruit of humility. I mean, you're going to see so much fruit until you're not going to even be able to eat it all up at one time. It's going to be so much fruit that's just bearing and bearing. But the fruits won't go to waste. But there's going to be so much fruit in your life. And it all comes from abiding. You have to abide. You have to abide. We have to abide. Are we going to get it right? No. Are we going to get it right all the time? No, we're not going to get it right all the time. But it's the constant practice. And the more we practice, the better we get at it. You know, even if you look at sports people, you know, people that are really great at sports or really great at instruments or whatever, how do they get great at whatever it is that they're great at? They get great at it by abiding in it, by living in it. They're constantly practicing. They're constantly practicing, and they're not putting it down. So we have to constantly practice the instructions that God gives us. We have to constantly practice those things. And the more we practice them, the better we're going to become at them, and the more fruit and the more good fruit we're going to see coming up in our lives. Guys, this is day 17 out of day 40. My prayer is that we're all putting together, putting everything in its proper place, putting everything that God has already given us, putting that to work. Guys, abide in His Word. Let His Word abide in you. Continually put it into practice. And I will see you all on day 18. Love you guys.